In every real collapse zone on record, from besieged cities to disaster-stripped regions where law evaporated overnight, investigators later noticed the same pattern. Survivors were not identified by strength, intelligence, or preparation. They were identified by absence. No witnesses remembered them clearly. No one could describe their habits. No one could say when they arrived or where they went. They existed, but left no readable signal behind. Silence, in this context, has nothing to do with morality, calmness, or discipline. It is not about being quiet. It is about denying the world proof that you are still alive. The moment systems fail, sound stops being background noise and becomes data. Every repetition becomes a schedule. Every routine becomes a broadcast. Every attempt to feel safe creates a pattern that someone else can study, predict, and exploit. Most people die after collapse not because they lacked food, weapons, or shelter, but because they were detected. They revealed themselves slowly, confidently, and unintentionally. They assume danger announces itself loudly. It doesn't. It listens. It waits. It builds a model of you from fragments you don't even realize you are emitting. The old world trained you to express, explain, signal, and reassure. That training becomes lethal when there is no longer a system to protect you. In a lawless environment, silence is not the absence of action. It is an operational posture, a controlled erasure of presence. And here is the part most people never understand until it is too late. The most dangerous violations of silence do not sound dangerous at all. Rule number 7 looks harmless, reasonable, even virtuous. That is exactly why it kills. The most lethal misunderstanding about silence is the belief that it means becoming invisible by eliminating all sound. People who attempt total quiet die early. Absolute silence is not natural, and anything unnatural attracts attention in a broken environment. When a space that should breathe, creak, echo, or decay suddenly goes dead, it becomes a question mark, and question marks get investigated. In collapse conditions, silence is not binary. It is modulation. You are not trying to erase noise. You are trying to avoid patterns. A single sound is rarely fatal. Repetition is. What exposes you is not the footstep, the cough, or the dropped object. What exposes you is the consistency with which it happens. The human brain, especially under threat, is a pattern-hunting weapon. So is every predator that replaces the law. People raised in the old world assume danger comes from spikes, gunshots, shouts, chaos. In reality, danger comes from rhythm. The same door opening every morning, the same movement at dusk, the same pause, the same light, the same sequence. Over time, your existence becomes statistically visible. True silence means controlled randomness. It means allowing the environment to remain believable, a structure that occasionally settles, a space that sounds abandoned because abandonment is noisy in its own way. Wind moves debris. Metal expands and contracts. Animals test empty places. Total stillness contradicts reality and signals intention. If you try to live like a ghost, you become a marker. Ghosts imply value. They imply something is being hidden. The goal is not to vanish. The goal is to be unremarkable, to blend into the background decay of the world so completely that no one can tell whether you were ever there at all. Silence at the operational level is not about suppression. It is about camouflage through imperfection. You survive not by being quiet, but by sounding like nothing worth noticing. Most people think sound exposes them. In reality, time does. After collapse, the most valuable intelligence is not what you hear, but when you hear it. A single noise tells nothing. A repeated noise at a predictable hour tells a story, and stories get followed. The old world trained humans to live by clocks, wake cycles, meals, work hours, rest periods. When structure disappears, those habits remain, and they become the loudest signal you can emit. You may change locations, reduce movement, even mask sound, yet still broadcast your presence through timing alone. A fire lit every evening, movement at first light, silence during the same night window. Over days, this creates a temporal fingerprint. Predators do not need to approach you to study you. They observe from distance. They let time reveal you. Once your rhythm is mapped, they no longer need luck. They arrive when you are weakest, distracted, or exposed, not when you are alert. This is why people are often attacked out of nowhere, even though the attack was mathematically inevitable. Operational silence requires temporal distortion. You break routines not by acting randomly, but by refusing repetition. Sleep shifts. Activity windows move. Needs are met irregularly. Some days, nothing happens. Other days, multiple actions cluster together and then disappear again. You deny observers the ability to build a schedule. This is psychologically uncomfortable. Humans crave rhythm because rhythm creates safety in the mind. In collapse, that comfort becomes a liability. The moment your body starts demanding consistency, you are already leaking information. Silence at its highest level is not the absence of sound, but the absence of predictability. If no one can tell when you exist, they cannot plan around you. And if they cannot plan, they cannot hunt. People assume that moving slowly is safer. Quiet steps, careful shifts, controlled breathing. This logic belongs to the old world. In collapsed terrain, slow and consistent movement is one of the easiest signatures to track. It creates duration, and duration creates exposure. A fast action creates a moment. A slow action creates a timeline. Timelines can be studied. When you move cautiously for too long, you are not hiding. You are presenting yourself as a continuous signal. Every second you remain in motion is another data point added to someone else's mental map. There is a reason predators strike decisively, or not at all. Lingering is weakness. Movement that hesitates, pauses repeatedly, or advances in a predictable rhythm advertises uncertainty. Uncertainty invites testing. Testing escalates into contact. Operational silence in movement means compression. You act in short, decisive bursts, then you disappear. Enter, do, exit. No wandering, no scanning loops, no back and forth adjustments that leave traces in space and time. You minimize not noise, but presence duration. People die because they took their time. They believed caution meant survival. What it actually meant was that multiple observers had time to notice them, triangulate their path, and decide what to do next. The safest movement is not the quietest. It is the one that leaves no story behind. If someone cannot describe where you came from, what you were doing, or where you went, then movement served its purpose. Silence in motion is not slowness. It is decisiveness followed by absence. People obsess over objects that make noise, but they ignore the objects that speak without sound. After collapse, material possessions communicate status, capability, and future intent even when they never move. A clean container, a repaired tool, a sorted pile. These are not neutral details. They are signals. Order is unnatural in a decaying world. The moment systems fail, entropy takes over. Spaces rot, scatter, and degrade. When someone encounters an area that looks maintained, even subtly, their brain flags it as occupied, defended, or valuable. Silence cannot compensate for visual contradiction. The most dangerous objects are not weapons or machines. They are signs of sustainability. Water storage that looks intentional. Cooking equipment that appears reusable. Materials protected from weather. These announce longevity. Longevity attracts pressure. Pressure attracts violence. Many people die because they believe hiding means minimizing sound while maximizing comfort. They tidy. They organize. They repair. They create an environment that feels psychologically stable. In doing so, they build a showroom of survival. Anyone passing through does not hear them, but they read them. True silence in objects means embracing believable decay. Things look unused. Items are scattered imperfectly. Repairs appear temporary or sloppy. Nothing suggests planning. Nothing suggests surplus. Your environment should look like a place someone passed through briefly and abandoned, not a place someone intends to live. If your shelter tells a story of competence, you have already spoken too much. Silence is not what your space sounds like. It is what it implies. Most people believe silence ends at the mouth. They stop talking and assume they are hidden. In reality, the body speaks constantly, and it speaks more honestly than words ever did. Under collapse conditions, human perception sharpens. People stop listening for sentences and start reading intent. Your eyes are the loudest signal. Where they go before your body moves, how long they rest on an object, whether they track exits automatically. These behaviors reveal experience, fear, and readiness. An untrained person looks at threats after they appear. A survivor looks before anything happens. That difference is visible from across a room. Posture exposes more than speech. Someone who stands balanced, weight distributed, hands free, and spine aligned is not relaxed. They are prepared. Someone who freezes briefly before reacting has already calculated outcomes. Someone who adjusts position when others move is mapping control space. These are not subtle tells. In a lawless environment, they are red flags. Even stillness can betray you. People assume holding position makes them unreadable. It doesn't. Stillness without tension looks different from stillness with restraint. Muscles loaded to move broadcast intention. The body leaks information long before action occurs. True silence requires behavioral misdirection. You allow harmless tells. You look uncertain when you are not. You let your posture degrade. You delay reactions by fractions of a second to appear unprepared. You break the profile others are trying to build of you. Silence is not muteness. It is the deliberate corruption of the data others use to judge you. If they cannot tell what you know, what you see, or what you are ready to do, they cannot decide how dangerous you are. And indecision is often the only thing that keeps you alive. Silence becomes most difficult the moment other people enter the equation. Humans are social by instinct, and after collapse, that instinct turns into a liability. Communities form quickly, not because they are safe, but because isolation feels unbearable. The mistake is assuming visibility equals protection. In a lawless environment, being known is the first step toward being evaluated. Evaluation leads to categorization. Useful, replaceable, threatening. Every category ends the same way. Loss of autonomy. People who survive longest are not leaders, helpers, or recognizable figures. They are peripheral. Kindness is especially dangerous. The person who shares, listens, fixes things, or mediates conflict becomes a reference point. Reference points attract dependency. Dependency attracts resentment. Resentment turns violent the moment resources tighten. History shows this pattern repeatedly, and it never ends well for the reliable one. Social silence does not mean hostility. It means controlled distance. You participate enough to avoid suspicion, but never enough to become central. You are present, but forgettable. You do not volunteer information, effort, or solutions. You allow others to underestimate your value. The most lethal mistake is being remembered for the wrong reason. The man who helped everyone. The woman who always knew what to do. These identities feel virtuous, but in collapse, they are liabilities. Once people attach expectations to you, you are no longer free. Silence in society is not isolation. It is strategic irrelevance. If the group collapses, fragments, or turns inward, the ones who are never essential are the ones who leave unnoticed. This is the rule that kills the most people because it looks harmless, rational, even ethical. Silence about your true capability is not deception for advantage. It is containment for survival. In collapse conditions, competence is currency. Anyone who demonstrates skill immediately becomes an asset, and assets do not belong to themselves for long. The moment others learn what you can do, they begin calculating how to use you, control you, or remove you. Sometimes, all three. Knowing how to repair equipment, treat injuries, organize logistics, plan movement, or read risk changes, how people see you instantly. You are no longer a person. You are a function. Functions attract pressure. Pressure creates coercion. Coercion escalates into confinement or elimination when compliance weakens. The deadliest misconception is that usefulness creates protection. It does not. It creates dependency. Dependency creates entitlement. Entitlement turns hostile the moment you say no, fail, or attempt to leave. People do not forgive assets for exercising autonomy. Even displaying calm under stress is a signal. Even asking the right questions too early is a signal. Even surviving situations others couldn't becomes a signal. You do not need to boast to expose yourself. Competence leaks through behavior unless it is actively masked. Operational silence means intentional underperformance. You let others struggle while you struggle visibly too. You allow inefficiency. You pretend to learn things you already know. You never become the person others rely on to fix what breaks. The most dangerous sentence you can say after collapse is, "I can handle that." The second most dangerous is saying nothing and handling it anyway while others are watching. Survival is not about proving value. It is about avoiding classification. Once people know what you are capable of, you lose the right to decide how and when to use it. Most people believe conflict is decided by strength, weapons, or numbers. In reality, it is decided by reaction speed and emotional leakage. The fastest way to lose control of a situation after collapse is to speak when tension rises. Explanation is a luxury of lawful societies. In a world without enforcement, every word you offer during conflict is treated as weakness, negotiation, or delay. None of those increase your safety. They only give the other side time to assess you. People talk because silence feels like surrender. They justify, clarify, threaten, or appeal to reason. What they are actually doing is revealing priorities, limits, and fear. Tone changes. Breathing shifts, vocabulary narrows, all of it becomes usable intelligence. Silence under pressure creates asymmetry. The person who does not react immediately controls the tempo. The one who fills the space loses leverage. Even a hostile party hesitates when their emotional probe receives no response. Uncertainty disrupts escalation. This does not mean passivity. It means restraint. You act only when action changes the outcome, not when emotion demands release. Many fatal encounters begin with unnecessary words spoken to reclaim dignity or control. Dignity has no survival value here. The most dangerous moment in any confrontation is not the first threat, but the first explanation. That is when positions harden and exit options disappear. Silence in conflict is not fear. It is denial of data. If they cannot read your intent, your threshold, or your next move, they cannot optimize their response. The person who reacts last often survives longest. Plans are the loudest form of speech in a collapsed world, even when spoken casually. People assume danger comes from enemies hearing intentions directly. In reality, most plans leak without ever being stated clearly. A comment about tomorrow, a question about routes, a remark about supplies. These fragments assemble themselves in other people's minds. The human brain is designed to predict. When structure disappears, prediction becomes obsession. Anyone listening is not hearing words. They are constructing timelines. When you talk about the future, you hand them a draft of your movement, your priorities, and your vulnerabilities. People die because they think transparency builds trust. Trust does not exist without enforcement. What exists is opportunity. The more clearly someone understands your next step, the easier it is to intercept, ambush, or exploit it. Even well-intentioned listeners become liabilities when information spreads beyond them. Silence about plans does not mean having none. It means keeping them internal until execution collapses the window for interference. You move first. Explain later if explanation is still necessary. The safest plan is the one no one can prepare against. Another common failure is thinking out loud. People externalize uncertainty to manage stress. In doing so, they reveal decision thresholds, how much delay they can tolerate, what resources they are missing, what scares them. All of this can be weaponized. Operational silence requires cognitive discipline. Decisions are made internally. Adjustments are made privately. Words are reserved for the present moment only, never for what comes next. The future should arrive without announcement. Silence is not only external. The final breach happens inside the mind, and it is the hardest one to control. When pressure increases, most people begin narrating their own actions. They rehearse outcomes, justify choices, repeat instructions, or argue with themselves. This internal noise feels stabilizing. It is not. Internal dialogue consumes bandwidth. Under threat, attention is a finite resource. Every repeated thought reduces situational awareness, reaction speed, and adaptability. People miss changes in their environment not because they are distracted by fear, but because they are distracted by themselves. Self-talk also locks behavior into scripts. Once you label a situation internally, you stop observing it. You act according to the story you are telling, not the reality unfolding. This is how people follow plans that no longer apply and walk into avoidable danger. In collapse conditions, emotion seeks expression somewhere. If it cannot escape outward, it loops inward. The mind becomes an echo chamber, amplifying anxiety until decision quality collapses. This is why people freeze, overcommit, or act impulsively after long periods of stress. Operational silence at the mental level means shortening the gap between perception and action. Observe, decide, move. No commentary, no justification, no rehearsal. The quieter your internal environment, the faster you adapt. The most dangerous enemy is not panic. It is rumination. Those who survive longest are not calmer. They are quieter inside. All 11 rules reduce to a single operational truth. Survival after collapse is not about hiding from the world, but about controlling how the world perceives your existence. Silence is not absence. It is authorship. Every sound, movement, object, reaction, and word you allow into the environment becomes part of a profile others are constantly updating. When you fail to manage that profile, someone else finishes it for you, and their conclusion is rarely in your favor. The people who die first are not reckless. They are expressive. They explain themselves. They signal competence. They establish routines. They create environments that look intentional. They believe being understood equals being safe. That belief belongs to a world with rules. The people who last do something colder. They fragment their identity. They refuse consistency. They allow misinterpretation. They let others underestimate, misread, and dismiss them. Not because they are weak, but because they understand that clarity invites control. Silence is not ethical or unethical. It is mechanical. It either reduces incoming pressure or increases it. Every rule you ignore adds weight. Eventually, the structure collapses under its own visibility. Rule 7 matters most because it governs all the others. The moment people know what you can do, silence everywhere else becomes meaningless. Capability is the loudest signal of all. In the end, survival is not about being the best, the strongest, or the smartest person in the room. It is about being the hardest to model. When the world cannot predict you, it cannot efficiently destroy you.